Hello and welcome back to Building on a Budget Models. I'm Thomas and this is the second part of the Tamiya Mazda RX-7 R1 in 1/24th scale in association with Kent Models. Now in this part I'm going to start with the Wankel rotary engine, putting it together. It's a nice addition. I believe in the previous Infini version of this kit it didn't come with the engine. Mainly doing this with Tamiya aluminium and semi-gloss black, also using some of their matte black as well. All goes together really simply, and a bit of extra thin cement secures it really nicely. I'll add a bit of weathering to this later on. It's really compact. Now there's then a few other features that go in the engine bay. It suggests to do the engine bay in the body colour, however I decided, because I wanted this to look like a track car, to do it in black instead. There's then this kind of brace that goes over the middle. These called Monte Carlo bars, but I'm not sure what the technical name is for them. And then there's a plastic section with a moulded Mazda logo. Of all the 24th scale Tamiya kits I've made before, this is only the second one to have an engine. It's a pretty nice addition, especially as the rotary is such a unique engine. There's a small RX-7 decal that goes here in the middle. And then I added some panel line accent just to highlight some of the details and screw heads. Use the cotton bud just to remove some of the excess. Now when it came to the race seat from the Aoshima detail set, it didn't have holes for seatbelts. So I used a 2mm drill bit to make the holes and then folded up some 400 grit sandpaper to try and smooth them out as best as possible. Pretty happy with that. When test fitting it, it didn't quite fit in, so just clipped off some of the kind of outsides of the bottom to narrow it down. You won't see these parts anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Then it fits in nicely. Now I'm planning to do the rear of this in carbon fibre, but decided to give it a black coat first after the primer, and I did the front in matte red. Now in order to carbon fibre up this, I put a large sheet of masking tape over the back, and then when I was happy with its position, folded it down into all the creases and used a craft knife to cut it around the edge. When I was happy with the template, I put it down onto the carbon fibre decal sheet and cut this out. This was then more or less exactly the right shape. As I'd already painted the back in black, any places where it didn't quite match up worked out perfectly fine as well. Decal solution helped it go really nice and flat. I used the kit decals for the interior. The kit comes with right-hand drive or left-hand drive. I chose right-hand drive as it's a Japanese car. Also added one of the Mazda decals from the number plates to the back. You can see here where the pedals will go on either side. And I also used the racing steering wheel from the Aoshima set, done in aluminium and matte black. The interior was mainly done in matte black with some aluminium for the floor, and also a carbon fibre decal went underneath where the gear stick went. The Aoshima set came with this rev counter, which I thought was quite a nice feature to put on the dash here. That was all done in silver, a little blue thing for, I don't know what it is exactly. There's a decal that goes in the middle. I wanted to make a roll cage, so I found this sprue was kind of the right sort of size to fit in, and then wanted to do some bars to go to the back. Decided not to do a full one as I was a bit worried about it not quite fitting inside the bodywork, but I sprayed this in TS49 bright red. Also added a spare Sparco decal to the seat, and then used these spare buckles and seat belts which I had left over from a different kit. These seat belts are from the recent Lotus RX-7 by Tamiya. They give you 3 different colour variants, so it's quite nice that I had these black ones left over. I find it's best to thread the seatbelt buckles whilst they're still on the photo edge fret. And because they're adhesive, they stick down quite nicely. Then added some 4-point harness to the kind of lap section. And then I had some spare sabelt decals. The roll cage just stuck into place with some super glue. I guess it's more of a roll bar, but you know, it adds a bit of detail. These Advan Super Racing wheels were done in TS49 bright red, and then I did the centres of them in silver. Now, as these have Aoshima's female fitment on the inside, that needed to be removed. And so the first thing I did was to clip the centres out, and then afterwards I gave them a little bit of a sand using my Dremel. I want to be as careful as possible here so as to not damage any of the visible parts. I used some Gorilla Glue gel to attach the chrome outer ring to these wheels. I think this is a really nice feature that they come in 2 parts like this. Then get quite a lot of decals that come with them, but these Super Advan decals go in the centres. Pretty happy with that. Now firstly, I built up all the undercarriage and suspension as instructed. Most of this was done in Tamiya aluminium, silver or semi-gloss black. The undercarriage had already been done in matte black. I actually clipped the rear suspension to be a little bit shorter so as to give a slightly lower profile. And I also left out the polycaps as I knew that I would need to attach the wheels on in a slightly different way. The exhaust system's all one piece. Now I added some modifications to the front suspension. Initially I put the coilovers in place, but then I realised that you wouldn't be able to change the camber of the front wheels as they were taking up too much room and couldn't be angled. So I chose to remove the coilovers of the suspension and then reposition the front axles at an angle. So as you can see here, there's the hole for the axle and then there's the hole behind for the suspension. I just put the tops of the axles in there, and then it gave me an adjustable suspension. As you can see here, the camber is quite easily adapted. Now this part of the windscreen here is where the window wipers go. That needs to be done in matte or semi-gloss black. And then there's no window masks with this set, unfortunately, so I did the interior trim using black Sharpie. Then test fitted it just to see that I was happy with all of the black parts. I also did the rear lights using Sharpie. Started by doing the central brake light and then did the orange indicators on the outside and the red indicators in the middle. The black Sharpie is really good here because it really does make it quite opaque, whereas the colour from the orange and red is still quite vibrant. Pretty happy with that. Now then I decided to do a front lip. I watched a tutorial from the YouTuber JH Hobby where he recommended using sheet styrene. This is 0.5mm styrene, which I first cut into a rectangle, roughly the kind of width of the front lip of the car. Then I white tacked it on to get the vague sort of curve of the front. Because this is so thin, you can cut it out using regular household scissors. Try to get this shape as symmetrical as possible. But also wanted to keep the kind of extreme sort of right and left ends of them as flat as possible so that I could add another aerodynamic feature. Give them a light sand just to smooth them down. Cut out two more rectangles and then sanded them into a sort of fin shape, and then they were quite easily superglued onto the edge. When I was happy with this, I test fitted it again with the white tack, and then I painted it all matte black before adding some carbon fibre decals to the outside flaps. Later I also added a couple of photo etch pin heads to the ends of these, just to make them look a little bit more realistic. Now when it came to the bodywork, I'd given this 4 coats of TS13 gloss clear from Tamiya, and then I've wet sanded it firstly with 2000 grit and then 3000 grit. I didn't want to give this a mirror shine. For one thing, I'm not particularly good at doing that, and also I was worried about burning through to any of the decals. Now Kent models do their own polish, this hyper polish. It's really nice and easy to use. I simply squirted some onto the area and then used the Dremel without it being on to kind of rub it in, and then used it at its lowest speed, 2, to polish these areas, firstly with this medium or polishing sponge, and then with a smaller medium one, and then went on to using the finer one. Be careful not to go near raised details or edges. Now for the bonnet here, I was very nervous about polishing this because of the carbon fibre decal underneath. The fine polishing sponge, and I'm pretty pleased with that. It's not perfect, but I think it's pretty shiny. And when I'd given this all a clean and got rid of any excess polish, I then used this Tamiya curved masking tape to go around the door rubber seals. Now this kit has them on the sides and also the front. I'm using Revell acrylic here because I find that it can be brushed on really nicely, and also you can scratch away mistakes if you're quick using a cocktail stick. Pretty pleased with that. There's also a small black bit that goes at the back of the car. It looked a lot neater than this when it was finished. Then the tail lights and extra lights at the front were done with silver on the back and a bit of red Sharpie when needed. Before gluing it all together, I gave it a bit of a test fit to make sure I was happy. Bodywork clips together at the back first and then comes down over the front. Pretty happy with how it all looks. The bonnet doesn't have a hinge or anything like that, and the rear glass just slots in place. This is the new spoiler I'm going to be using. I'll have to glue that on. Now there's some little tabs on the inside to help you position the window glass. I used some Bob Smith Super Gold super glue because it is foam safe. Left that for a while, taped in place, and then used some Tamiya extra thin cement to secure the interior. Pretty happy with how it all looks. Now for the wheels, I found a 2mm thick piece of styrene pipe, which I superglued to the centre of these, and it fit really nicely onto the hubs. As I said though, I removed the poly caps because they were offering up too much resistance. Bodywork then goes on really nicely. The rear light was added using some PVA glue. And I used some Bob Smith Super Gold carefully with the rear window. Bonnet just clips in place, and I used some PVA glue for the rear spoiler. Wanted to get that as symmetrical as possible. I then printed off a sun strip at the front with the Mazda Speed logo, and the wing mirrors, which I'd already done in carbon fibre decal, were secured on the side, also in Bob Smith Super Gold. There's an option of left or right hand drive wipers. I added the front and left off the rear. And then I cut out some more sheet styrene for some kind of extra fins for the side skirts. Just had some little photo etch pins to go on the bonnet. Pretty happy with how that looks. And there we are. It is finished. Here's some shots of it in my Fujimi garage, also from Kent Models. I'm really pleased with how this has turned out. This is something really new for me, adding so many aftermarket parts and also making a kind of street racer, kind of drift car mod build like this. I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out, and it's definitely given me the taste for doing more builds like this in the future. Thank you very much to Kent Models for supplying this kit, and thank you very much for watching. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below, what you think I did well, what I may have done differently. I'll just leave you with these 360-degree views, and there's a little concept image after they're finished. Thank you very much for watching. Please do like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.